actually at Harvard during the time period that Facebook was starting to come up in my postdoc, and so it was something that the students I was working with and the faculty that I were working with, we started playing with, and that's how it started. And for those of you that don't know, Facebook is actually, I don't know if you had this at Georgetown, but at Chicago, because it's a 3,000 person undergraduate campus, every year had a Facebook. So you literally could flip through and go, oh, that's the person I just got in an argument with in my discussion about Plato, so you could find them, get to know them. And it was actually, that was the original tool, so you knew who was in your class. And a lot of smaller private institutions have had those sorts of things for years, and that's where the name came up. I actually use it in two different ways, or one way currently in my research. I haven't used it yet in my teaching. And I actually manage my projects through Facebook, and the logic is very simple. I know students are less likely to check their UC Merced email than whatever email their Facebook account is linked to. It's really a very simple thing. I know that if I put a message on their wall, that they are getting it in their iPhone, in their Blackjack, in their BlackBerry, in their web mobile phone, on their laptop, on their desktop, immediately, and actually paying attention to it, as opposed to the UC Merced email address, which, as any of you know, as administrators or as teachers, know that you get all sorts of stuff, everything in happenings, random messages from the chancellor, random messages from staff, faculty assemblages, spam. I'm continually getting bombarded for some reason to buy bovine cells. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm at a quasi-agricultural school, but I would think that my colleagues in the natural sciences should be the ones getting that, although they might be getting news about the new criminology textbook from Sage Publications. Who knows? But it's an efficient tool. I created a group that they could join. We post questions, we post assignments, discourses, etc. through that group. And it has made it such that I don't have to worry about scheduling a meeting time to get my 10 students that are working on this project on protest in California in the same room. Because they go there, the questions are there, and if the assignments are there, and one of the ways we can discuss the research is it just becomes a thread of dialogue. The second way, and I'm going to roll this out this coming semester, is that I have grown tired of having office hours and sitting in my office to have no one show up. And this is the consummate complaint of any faculty member teaching any class, right? Have to have office hours, but lo and behold, you sit there and no one shows up. So I'm going to hold virtual office hours through Facebook, which means that if they want to come, if they want to chat, you can friend me and use the messaging function. This actually started because of a number of students that could never make my office hours because of a bazillion commitments, but they would find me at 4:30 on Facebook, and I'd hear the little boop, and then okay, what's Megan doing? Oh, okay, question about reading. Yeah, okay, yeah, and the next thing I know, 15 minutes into the conversation, we've delved into it. And also because I had this very interesting experience in my race and ethnicity class last spring, that I had a student that was completely in their shell. I couldn't do anything to pull them out of it. Discussion is 25% of the grade, and they were just going to fail the class unless they figured something out, unless we figured something out. And they weren't even comfortable sitting in my office, which is actually a first. I've never had a student that is just so petrified of me, because there's really nothing to be afraid of, anyone that's actually gotten to know me, as opposed to the stage persona of Soch One. And so that's how we ended up dealing with her discussion grade, was over instant messaging. It's not ideal. It's not, and as I informed this person, it is not the best thing for you in the long run of your academic training, because they were talking about graduate school, and the idea of making it through graduate school without ever going to office hours is just mind-blowing. Although it would have been nice at times. It might have been easier to reach some of my professors that way. So I'm going to try that and see how it goes. I don't know how it will go. It's actually, I'm actually stealing this idea from Katie Winder. She was the first person I heard using the virtual office hours because she too just got tired of sitting in her office waiting to hear questions and then getting complaints about her accessibility when the reality was it was the students that aren't accessible. Well, now you're on Facebook, and but I will set certain parameters for that, and it's something that I think we've all had to develop. I don't answer emails after 9 p.m. I don't think that's unreasonable. I tell students in the syllabus that they may or may not get an email over the weekend if they email me. That's my time. I'm not on the clock. And particularly now that I don't get furlough days, there's no damn way in hell that I am answering stuff that are not actual emergencies over the weekend. Then in terms of some of the other public discourses, I think one of the most interesting things that I found is students that were in my classes before are the ones that are now sending me stuff. So I don't know, about a third of my race and ethnic class sent me links from various news outlets about the Justice of the Peace in Louisiana that wouldn't marry the interracial couple. And of course I was like, okay, yeah, I'm on this. The first couple times I was like, ooh, thanks. And then after like 5 times I was like, crap, okay. And then, when I got to a third of the class, I realized, well, this is an effective tool in the sense that it's a way for them to continue what Tom was mentioning, which was the contact and the networking, and showing that they still have interest in it. Now, from a purely sociological standpoint, we've been studying networks for a long time, and so it's kind of interesting to see the rest of the world kind of catch up to us in the sense. The video clip that Mike showed is actually the argument from a faculty member of mine at Stanford. It's called The Strength of Weak Ties by this guy Mark Rennebetter, that it's not necessarily who you know that gets you a job or finds you a place to live or those sorts of things. It's that second tie, that weak tie, someone you know through an acquaintance that often gets you the job or helps you out with other issues. So it's interesting to see that development. I have no problem friending students. And I think that's also in part based on my personality, having been a soccer coach since the time I was 18. At one point when I was in graduate school, I was 25 coaching a women's, or assistant coach for a women's semi-professional team. There's this, boundary that maintenance that has to occur. And so it's something that I'm aware of and have always, and have been dealing with for a long time. What I post in Facebook is no different than the rants and raves that they will catch from me in Soc 1 or any of my other classes. Now maybe it's part of being a sociologist and dealing with topics like protest and politics and race and gender and sexuality that, it's okay for me to sort of go out on a limb. What's been more interesting, I think, and Ruth alluded to this, is, people that knew me from grade school all of a sudden realizing that, I have these quote-unquote extreme ideas about issues of race or poverty or politics or these sorts of things. They remember me as the mild-mannered kid with the Dorothy Hamill haircut from the 1970s. So that's really interesting. And I think one of the things that we're certainly seeing, and I think the three of us have alluded to this, is that our students, this generation of students, definitely views these networking sites very, very differently than those of us of a later generation outside of the 18 to 25-year-old age demographic. And it's been interesting to see that interplay and that shift, because I think Facebook has become a way for people, say, over 30 to really reconnect with their past. And that's, in that demographic, they are the largest growing portion, because it's really become an effective way to rekindle old friendships. And it's always very neat to see someone that you haven't seen in 20 years pop back up into your life. And so I think it's a very different motivation. LinkedIn is much more professional. That's more about sort of professional networking. Plaxo is another one that also, it's sort of trading business cards sort of scenario. MySpace is not something I use. It's not something I've ever gotten into, mostly because, and again, there is some research in sociology about this. Facebook is a ready-built platform that you can just put your email address, name, you're ready to go. MySpace actually takes some maintenance and some effort, and you get criticized if you don't maintain it. Whereas if you don't update your status in Facebook for 2.5 weeks, you might get the occasional comment, but not much. Twitter, I think, is an interesting one. I don't know how to adapt 140 characters to academic work, although I have seen, and some of you might have seen this, there's a group, I think it's either out of New York or the Bay Area, a theater group that's doing great works in 140 characters or less, which in the theater world is not necessarily something new. Condensed Shakespeare, all the Shakespearean comedies in 30 minutes or something like that. There's a famous troupe out of Chicago called Too Much Light, makes the baby go blind 30 plays in 30 minutes. I'm not sure how some of those things will work, but I'll stop there. We're a little over our allotted time.
All right, so it's time for open discussion. Any comments, questions you want to raise?
I have a question. For the last 3 years, I've been teaching Spanish and Portuguese, some college. And I've been using for the last 3 years the electronic book. I call myself paperless teacher. And at the beginning, I had some resistance from my students, and now I have, it's just wonderful. It's the best thing to have, to use technology. And some books, we have now the new feature they call the voice board. So we have a communication, they'll be able to speak and feedback. And I have a Facebook, but what I want to do, I have my Facebook, a regular Facebook, but my goal, what I want to do, and I'd like to ask you, I would like to open something like just academic, just for my students, my foreign language students. And then this Facebook will be just talking about culture, wherever we have about countries, what's going on, but be just students. I don't want to mix with family and other things. So I know we have the MySpace, and they have one, the original from Brazil. So in Brazil and Europe, we use a lot of Orkut. I don't know if you know about Orkut. So it's something like Facebook. But since I already have my Facebook, can I open a different one just for students? Because I have some of my students start to invite me from here, and I said, I can't, I don't feel comfortable. I like to have just for us, and sending, use wiki, and then we have, is possible maybe to open another Facebook with a different name, or I don't know.
You can open as many accounts as you
And
want.
then we be with a different name.
Exactly. Yeah, I think there are ways, Simone, you use filters. You can set up multiple groups on Facebook, and they're not visible to each other, right?
So you can set up a group in and of itself that might be, UC Merced Portuguese Fall 2009, and then invite people to that specific Facebook.
Yeah, let the students know.
But I think it's a little. You then run the risk of having to micromanage everyone with that one account. I think the better solution is to use a separate account.
That's why I want to open a separate one.
And that's possible. I mean, all you need is, Facebook used to only be people at certain Ivy League institutions, and then it became only educational institutions, but now anyone with any email can open up a Facebook. So you could, for example, get a Gmail account and then use that Gmail account only to be used, or Yahoo, or whatever, and then create that profile, and that would be your strictly academic profile. Because I'm assuming you've already used your UC Merced account for your current Facebook. So you can't create multiple accounts with one email. You would have to have multiple
I want
emails.
something separate outside, like with a different email address. Like you said, it didn't let my students from here, because I also teach in Modesto and Delta College, and they have from all over people, that relate to this. So I can let them know, go to this.
Right, and then you would just, so if you create your own, say UC Merced Spanish Portuguese Prof at Gmail, use that to open the account, and then set up the account as you wish, and invite students, friend students, as you see fit, or send the invitation to them to join a group, or just work through that identity.
And it would be just for conversation. Only related to the language and culture, but nothing social or private. Because nothing about like we mentioned about your cat or none of it, just about like you said, you can send some videos, you can send articles or whatever. I'll try to.
Another thing we haven't talked about that I've never tried to do, but I've been curious about is, on Facebook, you can be friends with people. You can also be fans of things, and you can also have groups. You can join groups, right? And one thing that I've just sort of idly thought about is, and I mean, I have some friends who are professional performers who, have decided that they don't want to have, 1,000 friends. I mean, everyone who likes their artwork or their performance. And so they're friends of their friends, and then they also set up a fan group, and people who are their fans can be part of their fan group. And essentially on a fan group, the owner of the group can post as little or as much as they want, and it's basically a chance for people to talk amongst themselves. And it's the same thing with groups, I mean, just, interest groups. People who like a certain place, or people who are interested, some of them are silly and some of them are serious. And we set up one here at UC Merced when we were planning for the September 24th walkout, the V-Hike protest. We set up a UC Merced 924 walkout group, and everyone who was involved in planning